Shantel was mine once, not because I owned her, but because I broke her. Watching Ryu rebuild what I destroyed, that alone makes her worth pursuing again.
Those were the words of a man who wants her back. Not out of love, but obsession. After seeing Ryu rebuild what he believed he had completely destroyed. Welcome to episode 3. If you're new here, you're about to step into a story of control, healing, and dangerous desire. Make sure to watch the previous episodes so you don't miss how we got here. Now let's dive right in. After a brief pause, Heejin finally spoke, her voice light, though curiosity sharpened every word. Brother, who is this woman you're interested in? Haesoo didn't look at her. His gaze stayed fixed on the table as he answered calmly, decisively. She's a woman worth protecting. That was all he said. The room slipped into an awkward silence, heavy and restrained. No one dared to press further. Heejin lowered her eyes, hiding the storm beneath her composed expression, while Haesoo remained unreadable, his thoughts already elsewhere. Minutes later, the meal came to an end. Haesoo rose from his seat, straightening his coat with practiced ease. I have work to attend to, he said, leaving the dining room without another word. Heejin excused herself soon after, her smile polite as she walked away from her parents. The moment she stepped into the guest room and the door clicked shut behind her, the calm facade cracked completely. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. I want you to find out who the woman close to my brother is, she said coldly. I don't care how long it takes. I want everything. When the call ended, she stared at the dark screen, jaw tightening. Whoever this woman was, she had already crossed a line. She should never have thought of taking Ryu, because in Heejin's mind, he was hers. 10 minutes later, Ryu arrived at his mansion. The guard stepped aside as he entered, his footsteps echoing softly through the living room. Shantel was seated on the sofa. The moment he stepped in, she knew it was him. The rhythm of his steps, the faint scent of leather and cold night air clinging to him. She straightened slightly, but didn't turn her head. When Ryu took the seat across from her, the leather creaked under his weight. So, are we done with the training? Shantel asked quietly. Yes, Ryu replied without hesitation. A brief silence followed before he continued, his voice low and steady. It's time for your revenge. Her fingers curled slowly in her lap. Are you ready for it? He asked. Yes, she answered, her voice firm, unwavering. There's a gala tomorrow night, Ryu said. I want you to accompany me. Shantel didn't hesitate. All right. The room fell into silence once more, thick and heavy. Then Ryu spoke again, his tone different, quieter, almost careful. Shantel, have you ever thought of giving yourself a chance to fall in love after everything you've been through? The question struck her like a sudden blow. She froze, breath hitching, her mind scrambling for footing. Ryu continued before she could respond. I don't want an answer tonight. Just think about it, for as long as it takes. He stood up, the soft sound of movement breaking the stillness, and walked away without another word. Shantel remained seated in the quiet living room, her heart racing, his question echoing in her mind long after his footsteps faded. That same night, in the expansive living room of Choi Seokjun's mansion, Choi lounged in a plush armchair, a beautiful woman seated casually in his lap. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of chandeliers reflecting off polished marble floors. A knock at the door preceded one of his men stepping in, bowing slightly. Sir, the man said, voice steady, a gala will be held tomorrow night. Choi's eyes narrowed slightly, and a smirk tugged at his lips. Who organized it? He repeated, as if testing the man's resolve. Mr. John, sir. He is one of the powerful, still relevant figures in the middle-aged Mafia circles. Choi leaned back, the woman in his lap raising an eyebrow at his expression. Very well, he said finally. I will attend. The man bowed and left the room, leaving Choi alone with a slow, calculating smile spreading across his face. The following morning, in the guest bedroom of Ryu's parents' mansion, Heejin sat on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, her posture composed, her expression deceptively calm. Her phone buzzed, and she answered at once, her voice sharp. Speak. Miss, the man on the other end said hesitantly. I couldn't find anything on her. There's no information available, no background, no family records, not even a confirmed name. Heejin's eyes narrowed as a flash of anger crossed her face. She had anticipated resistance, but not this. She knew immediately who had sealed the information. Ryu. She ended the call abruptly, the click echoing in the quiet room. Her hand trembled as she tossed the phone onto the carpet. What kind of charm has this woman used on him? She muttered, jaw tightening. That he would go to this extent to hide everything. Then, with cold certainty, she whispered, "Whoever you are, you will not take him from me." The room fell silent once more, but the fire in her chest burned brighter. The night of the gala arrived quietly. In a guest room of Ryu's mansion, Shantel sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded neatly in her lap, her thoughts circling the question Haesoo had left her with. Falling in love. The idea felt distant, dangerous even, yet it lingered stubbornly, refusing to fade. A soft knock broke the silence. Before she could answer, the door opened gently, and Shantel turned toward the sound as two women entered, their movements light and professional. "Good evening, Miss Shantel," one of them said warmly. "We're here to get you ready for the night." The stylist guided her carefully to her feet, speaking softly so she wouldn't feel disoriented. Fabric was placed into Chantel's hands, different textures, different weights, until after a brief pause, one was chosen. The gown flowed smoothly over her body, elegant and commanding, designed not to hide her strength but to honor it. Once she was dressed, the makeup artist stepped forward, explaining each touch before it happened. Brushes skimmed Chantel's skin with practiced care, enhancing rather than masking her natural beauty. Cool fingers styled her hair, framing her face in a way that felt familiar, never intrusive. Throughout it all, Shantel remained quiet and composed. When they finally stepped back, the stylist smiled softly. "You're ready." Shantel inhaled slowly. Though she couldn't see her reflection, she knew, without doubt, that tonight she would make heads turn. Shantel stepped out of the bedroom and into the living room, her pace unhurried yet assured. The soft click of her heels echoed against the polished floor, each step steady, deliberate. There was no hesitation in her movements. Haesoo, who had been standing near the window, turned at the sound. He didn't speak right away. Seconds stretched as Shantel stopped in front of him, close enough for him to sense her warmth, her calm confidence filling the space between them. His gaze lingered, unreadable at first, before something softened in his eyes. "You are breathtaking," he said at last, his voice low, edged with reverence rather than admiration. A small, restrained smile curved Chantel's lips. "Thank you," she replied simply, her tone gentle but sure. Soon after, they settled into the back seat of the car, the door closing softly behind them. As the vehicle pulled away from the mansion, Haesoo turned toward her. "If you find yourself in a situation and I'm not with you," he said calmly, "remember the strength you've found." Shantel nodded, posture straight, expression composed. 20 minutes later, Shantel and Ryu stepped into the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, casting a warm glow over the elegantly dressed guests. The chatter and laughter faded into a hushed murmur as all eyes turned toward them. Choi Seokjun was speaking to Kong Jun when the room went quiet. He turned, eyes widening in disbelief. There she was, Shantel. The woman he had used, broken, and discarded now stood before him like a phoenix reborn, radiating strength and unshakable confidence. Kong leaned closer, his voice low and incredulous. How did Ryu do it? How could he mend a woman that was beyond repair? Choi said nothing. His attention remained fixed entirely on Shantel, his lips tightening as he struggled to reconcile the image before him with the memories he had of her. Shantel moved through the ballroom with effortless grace, her blind eyes fixed forward, a serene smile on her lips. Every step, every subtle shift of her weight, exuded command and poise. The whispers began, a low, growing hum of curiosity, admiration, and intrigue. Who is she? The woman with Ryu Haesoo? She's stunning. Ryu guided her smoothly through the crowd, her hand tucked in the crook of his arm. His presence was a silent shield, letting her move unimpeded while hundreds of eyes burned with curiosity and envy. The sense of perfume, champagne, and nervous anticipation mingled in the air around her. Then she felt it, the familiar, nauseating scent that had haunted her for years. Choi Seokjun was near. Ryu leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. He's here, Shantel. To your left, about 15 paces. He's with that coward Kong Jo. Both of them are looking directly at us. A cold knot formed in Shantel's stomach, but it was replaced almost immediately by a surge of icy resolve. This was the moment she had been preparing for, her reckoning. Take me to him, she commanded, her voice steady and unwavering. Ryu nodded once, silent and approving, and guided her toward Seokjun. The crowd instinctively parted, forming a natural aisle, a stage for the confrontation that was about to unfold. Shantel could feel the rapid beat of her own heart, a fierce drum of defiance. The memories of Seokjun's laughter, his cruelty, and the violation he had inflicted flashed sharply through her mind. But this time, fear had no place. Rage and determination fueled every step. She stopped just a few feet from him. Seek-jun stood frozen, flanked by Kong, who fidgeted nervously at the sight of Ryu. The room held its collective breath. Choi Seek-jun, Shantel said, her voice cutting through the murmuring crowd like a sharpened blade. The name, delivered with venom and clarity, sent a ripple of tension through the ballroom. Every head turned, every whisper stilled. Even the chandeliers seemed to hang in anticipation, as though the world itself had paused to witness her triumph. Seek-jun looked at her with the focused intensity of a predator sizing up prey. A slow, mocking sneer twisted his lips before he spoke. My, what a transformation, Shantel, he drawled. Then he turned his gaze to Ryu, eyes gleaming with calculated cruelty. I must say, Haesoo, you've certainly polished up my old acquisition. The word was spat out, deliberate, filthy, meant to humiliate. Ryu Haesoo's grip on Shantel's arm tightened almost imperceptibly, his expression hardening to ice. He was about to speak, but Shantel beat him to it. Her voice cracked through the ballroom like a whip. I am no one's acquisition, Seek-jun, she said coldly, her blind eyes fixed in his direction as though she could see straight through him. And I was never yours to polish. I am Shantel. And you, her lips curved into a dangerous smile, are a monster who preyed on the helpless. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Polite facades shattered. Champagne glasses stilled midair. Seek-jun's face twisted with fury. Kong Jo stood rigid beside him, stunned, his eyes flickering between Shantel and Ryu, unable to process the woman standing before them. Seek-jun scoffed and turned to Ryu again. I must admit, Haesoo, you trained her well, especially in talking back. Ryu merely smirked, his silence sharper than any reply. Seek-jun's gaze slid back to Shantel, his smile turning obscene. But tell me, little bird, do you really think any man could love you if they knew what you are? What you've been through? What you let men do to you? The air went deathly still. Then he leaned slightly toward Ryu, voice lowered but dripping with filth. You enjoy broken things, don't you, Haesoo? I had her screaming once. I wonder if she still. Shantel moved. She stepped forward, pulling free from Ryu's arm in a bold, unmistakable act of self-possession. Her hand rose before anyone could react. Slap. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Gasps erupted. Kong Jo stumbled back in shock. Guests froze, eyes wide, mouths open. That, Shantel said calmly, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest, is for what you said to Ryu. She took another half-step closer, her chin lifted, unafraid. I don't care about my past, Choi. I survived it. The only thing on my mind now is ending you. For a brief moment, Seek-jun said nothing. Then he laughed, low, cold, furious, and deeply intrigued. His cheek burned, his eyes blazing with a dangerous mix of rage and fascination. Very well, little bird, he murmured. I'll be waiting. Shantel stepped back. Without hesitation, she reached for Ryu's arm, her fingers curling around him with quiet certainty. Together, they turned and walked toward Ryu's friend, who stood waiting beside one of the tables. Upon getting there, his friend smirked at Ryu before speaking. You have truly found an amazing woman, Haesoo. Ryu returned the smirk briefly, then turned slightly toward Shantel. Shantel, meet Lee Jun-ho. He's a very close friend of mine. Shantel inclined her head in his direction, her expression calm and composed. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Lee. Jun-ho chuckled softly. After what I just witnessed, the pleasure is mine. His tone shifted, turning serious. You did well tonight. Standing up to Choi Seek-jun like that takes courage. He paused before adding, but eliminating him won't be easy. He's slippery, ruthless, and well-connected. If you ever need help, you don't have to ask twice. Just tell Ryu. I will, Shantel replied quietly, her voice steady. The rest of the night passed in a strange, tense calm. Conversations resumed around them, though the earlier confrontation lingered like a shadow over the ballroom. When the gala finally drew to a close, Ryu guided her out with the same calm authority he had brought her in with. As they stepped into the cool night air, the weight of the ballroom lifted from her shoulders. Sometime later, Ryu and Shantel returned to the mansion. As they stepped into the quiet of the living room, Shantel was about to excuse herself when Haesoo's voice stopped her. Don't let what Seek-jun said get to you. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she turned fully toward the sound of his voice, her posture straight, composed. It didn't, she replied after a brief pause. Not anymore. Haesoo studied her, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Good, he said at last. Because everything he said was meant to break you again. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Then she spoke again, her voice softer, more introspective. You asked me once if I had ever thought about giving myself a chance to fall in love again. She hesitated, steadying herself. I do have an answer. But I don't know if the man I have fallen for is also in love with me. When Ryu heard this, he stepped closer until he was standing directly in front of her, a smile breaking through his usually guarded expression. I love you, Shantel, he said quietly. More than you can imagine. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her face. May I? He asked, his voice low and careful, seeking her consent, so different from the violations of her past. She nodded, a silent, unwavering affirmation. His lips met hers, gentle at first, then slowly deepening, the kiss filled with tenderness rather than urgency. A fresh wave of tears slipped from her eyes. It wasn't a kiss of burning passion, not yet, but one of understanding, of shared pain and fragile hope. It felt like a promise, a quiet vow that she would never face the darkness alone again. After a while, Ryu pulled back and let out a soft laugh. Shantel tilted her head slightly, sensing the shift. What is it? She asked. There's something I should tell you, he said. We've known each other before. Her breath hitched. When you were 8 and I was 10, he continued, back in Accra. I promised you I would marry you one day. The words struck her like lightning. Memories surged forward, fragmented but vivid. A Korean boy with gentle hands, always standing in front of her, shielding her, laughing as he made childish promises. I recognized you immediately that morning, Ryu went on. I was shocked to see you there. I had so many questions, but I knew one thing. I had to get you out. His voice lowered. When I found out everything, I was angry. Not just at Choi, but at myself. I should have come to Ghana earlier. I should have proposed to you then. Shantel laughed softly, emotion thick in her chest. I'm just glad you remembered me, Haesoo. He smiled. How could I forget? After a brief pause, he added, almost casually. Well, since we're official now, I suppose I should finally take you to meet my parents. They've been urging me to bring the woman I love. I don't mind, Shantel replied calmly. They eventually retired to their separate rooms. Later, in the quiet of his bedroom, Ryu picked up his phone and sent a message to his father, telling him that he would soon be bringing the woman he had fallen in love with. That same night, inside Choi's mansion, Seekjun strode into his study with Kong-jo following closely behind. The room was thick with shadows and the scent of expensive liquor. Seekjun poured himself a drink, his movements unhurried, his expression coldly amused. Forget her, Seekjun, Kong-jo said, forcing calm into his voice. Shantel is under Ryu Haesoo's protection now. Going after her again will only bring unnecessary attention. Seekjun laughed softly, then turned, his eyes cutting into Kong like a blade. You truly are a coward, he said flatly. Hiding behind fear because one man glared at you. Kong stiffened but said nothing. Ryu Haesoo does not frighten me, Seekjun continued, his tone almost bored. I have done far worse things and walked away untouched. He lifted his glass. Do you remember the family in America? The ones who thought they could deny me their daughter. A cruel smile curved his lips. Interpol couldn't touch me. No one ever does. A chill crawled down Kang's spine. Seekjun took a slow sip before adding, Shantel was mine once. Not because I owned her, but because I broke her. Watching Ryu rebuild what I destroyed. His eyes gleamed with dark fascination. That alone makes her worth pursuing again. Kong nodded slowly, masking the storm in his mind. Good, he thought. Let Choi chase Ryu. Let them tear each other apart. If Seekjun and Haesoo destroyed one another, he could reclaim his pride, and maybe even Shantel. Out loud, Kong lowered his gaze. Do as you wish, he said carefully. I just hope you know what you're doing. Seekjun's smile widened, dangerous and assured. I always do. Seekjun picked up his phone and dialed a number, his movements calm and deliberate. Seconds later, one of his men entered the room, bowing slightly. Has that woman, Heejin, arrived in Korea? Seekjun asked, his voice sharp. Yes, sir, the man replied promptly. Seekjun's lips curved into a thin, dangerous smile. Good. Send her everything I've done to Shantel tonight. I know Ryu erased all traces to protect her, but she should see it now. And if she wishes to join me, let her know where to find me. The man nodded and left without another word. Kong-jo watched quietly, a slow smirk spreading across his face. In the back of his mind, he thought the more the merrier. The chaos Sikjun was about to unleash could only work in his favor. The following afternoon, Ryu stood outside Shantel's room, a small box cradled in his hands. The dress inside had been carefully chosen and sent for that morning. He knocked lightly, then eased the door open and stepped inside. Shantel was still asleep, sunlight spilling through the curtains and painting her face in soft, golden warmth. A protective ache stirred in his chest as he took a few steps closer, taking in the serene sight. At the faint sound of his movements, she stirred. Her lashes fluttered, and her eyes opened slowly, meeting his calm, unwavering gaze. Without a word, Haesoo leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. Shantel's lips curved into a sleepy, contented smile, and a soft laugh escaped her, fragile but filled with peace. "Good afternoon," she murmured, her voice husky from sleep. Ryu's smile deepened. "Good afternoon, beautiful. I brought you something." He lifted the box slightly, a playful glint dancing in his eyes. Curiosity sparked in Shantel. She stretched and tilted her head toward him. "A gift? You could say that," he replied softly, warmth threading through his tone. "It's a dress for you to wear for the visitation." Shantel's smile widened, a hint of excitement threading through her usual calm demeanor. "Then let me put it on," she said, her voice laced with quiet anticipation. She took the box from him and carried it to the bathroom. "Take your time," Ryu said, his eyes lingering on her with a mixture of admiration and care. 20 minutes later, Shantel emerged from the bathroom, the dress flowing elegantly around her. Her hair framed her face perfectly, and her presence radiated a quiet, commanding beauty. Ryu froze for a moment, his eyes drinking her in, utterly captivated. Without hesitation, he closed the distance between them, capturing her lips in a deep, passionate kiss. Shantel responded with equal intensity, their connection electric, a mix of longing and relief woven into the moment. When they finally parted, their foreheads rested against each other, breaths mingling. Ryu's voice was low, warm, and full of admiration. "You're going to wow my parents," he murmured. Shantel giggled softly, the sound light and joyful. "I'll try not to embarrass you too much," she teased. Ryu smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Since we're going to my parents' place, we'll have lunch there," he added, his tone casual but carrying a quiet authority. Shantel nodded, her eyes sparkling. Ryu then retrieved his black leather jacket from his room, before he then led her out of the bedroom and through the quiet halls of the mansion, the soft click of their footsteps echoing on the polished floors. Outside, a sleek black car awaited, its glossy surface reflecting the afternoon sun. Once both sat in the back seat, the driver closed the door behind them. For a moment, silence settled, broken only by the hum of the idling engine. Then Ryu's voice, low and teasing, broke through. "You know, I'm a touchy person," he confessed, his gaze flicking toward her. "I can't seem to keep my hands to myself when I'm around you." Shantel's lips curved into a small, confident smile. "That's fine," she said softly. "I'm a touchy person too." Ryu's eyes darkened with amusement and desire. Without another word, he pulled her close, letting her lean against him. Their bodies molded together naturally, an unspoken understanding passing between them. Minutes later, the sleek black car pulled up in front of Ryu's parents' mansion. The sprawling estate gleamed in the afternoon sun, its manicured gardens and grand facade reflecting quiet opulence. Ryu opened the door for Shantel, helping her out gently, his hand lingering briefly at her waist. She stepped onto the driveway with poise, her dress flowing gracefully. Together, they walked toward the entrance, the weight of anticipation mingling with the warmth of the sun. The butler greeted them at the door, bowing slightly. "Welcome, Mr. Haesoo, miss," he said, opening the double doors for them. Inside, the mansion was filled with a subtle hum of activity, chefs and staff moving efficiently, preparing for the lunch Ryu had mentioned. Shantel followed Ryu through the grand foyer, her presence commanding attention even without her sight, the air around them charged with quiet elegance and expectation. As they stepped into the living room, Ryu's parents looked up from where they were seated, their faces lighting up with surprise and delight. Recognition flashed in their eyes immediately. Neighbors of Shantel's family back in Accra, they had never forgotten her. Mrs. Ryu rose gracefully, her eyes softening as they took in Shantel's elegant appearance, though the sight of her blind eyes caused a brief flicker of shock before her warmth returned. "Welcome, my dear," she said gently, moving forward to embrace her. "It's wonderful to meet you again. Though I must admit, seeing you like this is unexpected." Shantel smiled softly, returning the hug with quiet grace. "Thank you, ma'am. It's an honor to meet you. Mr. Ryu also stood, a broad smile breaking across his face, tinged with surprise. I remember your family well, he said, nodding toward her. It's clear you have grown to become a strong woman. Ryu's gaze lingered on Shantel, pride and affection evident in the subtle curl of his lips. Mrs. Ryu's voice carried calmly but with quiet authority as she spoke. Lunch will be ready shortly. We have so much to catch up on. Her eyes lingered on Shantel with both admiration and a protective concern. When they entered the dining area, a young woman stood there, her presence immediately noticeable. Hee-jin, poised and impeccably dressed, moved with practiced grace. Her dark eyes swept over Shantel, lingering just a fraction too long, a flicker of something unreadable flashing before she quickly composed herself into a warm smile. Welcome, Hee-jin said smoothly, her voice soft and measured, her eyes now locked on Shantel's face. It's so lovely to finally meet you. Shantel's smile remained gentle and polite, though she was acutely aware of the tension beneath the surface. Thank you, Shantel replied coolly, her tone unwavering. Mrs. Ryu gestured toward the dining table, her voice calm and inviting. Please let's sit. Lunch will be ready shortly. Ryu gently guided Shantel forward, his hand resting on her back, subtle yet protective. Hee-jin followed closely, maintaining her practiced air of cordiality, but her gaze flickered from Shantel to Ryu, her mind working through her thoughts in silence. Inside, a sharp, growing unease twisted. This woman, Shantel, had captured his heart. How? How can a woman who had been used and broken, who is blind, possibly be Ryu Haesoo's wife? That thought alone was unacceptable. She would not let Shantel take Haesoo from her, no matter what. As the family began to settle at the table, Shantel's calm demeanor and elegance drew quiet admiration. The way she carried herself with such grace, despite her past, was noticeable. Hee-jin's polite smile never faltered, but behind it, her eyes simmered with a sharp calculation. The lunch was sumptuous, the aroma of carefully prepared dishes filling the air. Each plate a reflection of the household's refined taste. Conversations flowed naturally, laughter punctuating the quiet grandeur of the dining room as stories and memories were shared. Shantel listened attentively, responding with measured grace, her calm presence adding a warmth that seemed to settle over the table. Not once did anyone inquire about the tragedy she had endured or how she had lost her sight. The Ryu family seemed to understand boundaries instinctively, recognizing that certain matters were hers alone to reveal. Instead, their curiosity centered on her well-being and the journey she had undertaken, how she had grown, and the remarkable woman she had become. Hee-jin, seated across from Shantel, struggled to maintain her carefully cultivated composure. She had hoped to leverage the information she had secretly obtained from Choi's man to unsettle Shantel, perhaps to gain some advantage. Yet each time she attempted to steer the conversation towards subtle insinuations, Mrs. Ryu's perceptive eyes met hers, sharp and unwavering. Hee-jin's words faltered under that silent scrutiny. The matriarch's subtle but firm intervention made it clear. Negativity or veiled attacks would not be tolerated at this table. Hee-jin found herself biting back frustration, forced to play the role of the polite, smiling guest, all the while her mind raced with schemes. Shantel, for her part, remained serene and composed, seemingly aware of the tension but entirely unconcerned. Her poise only amplified her presence. Eventually, lunch drew to a graceful close, and final pleasantries were exchanged. Ryu rose first, offering his hand to Shantel. She accepted it with ease, standing smoothly as he guided her from the table. After warm goodbyes, the two of them left the dining area together, their closeness unmistakable as they exited the house. Once the sound of their departure faded, the atmosphere shifted. Mrs. Ryu turned to Hee-jin. Come with me. Her tone was calm, but it left no room for refusal. Hee-jin followed her to a quieter sitting room at the far end of the house. As soon as the door closed, Mrs. Ryu turned to face her fully. The warmth in her expression was gone, replaced by something sharp and discerning. Hee-jin, she said evenly, I have watched you since you were brought into this family. I know your smiles, and I know your silences. Hee-jin stiffened. Mother, I don't understand. You do, Mrs. Ryu interrupted softly. And I will be very clear. She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. Shantel is not a threat to this family. She is the woman my son loves. If you think to harm her, undermine her, or disgrace her in any way, you will be opposing me. Hee-jin's lips parted, but no words came. Mrs. Ryu continued, her voice firm but controlled. What she has survived gives her strength, not shame. And I will not allow anyone in this house to treat her as less than she is. A long silence followed. Finally, Mrs. Ryu added quietly, "Choose wisely, Heejin. Because if you cross that line, you will not like the consequences." She turned and left the room, leaving Heejin standing alone, her polite smile long gone, her hands clenched tightly at her sides. Meanwhile, in the backseat of the car, the door closed softly and the vehicle pulled away from the mansion, as Shantel leaned back against the seat, quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice calm but thoughtful. "Haesoo, your adopted sister loves you too. I can tell." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "And I know she hates me for taking a place she believes was meant to be hers." Ryu turned toward her immediately. Without hesitation, he lifted his hands and held the sides of her face gently but firmly, grounding her. "Look at me, Shantel," he said softly but with unmistakable authority. "You are the one I chose. No one else." His voice hardened just slightly as he continued. "If she ever thinks of hurting you in any way, I will not hesitate to stop her, even if it means eliminating her." Shantel froze, shock rippling through her. She searched his face, sensing the absolute certainty behind his words. Then, instead of fear, something else rose in her chest, trust fierce and unshaken. She leaned forward and kissed him, slow and deliberate. Ryu returned the kiss instantly, his grip softening as his thumb brushed her cheek. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "No one can take your place," he murmured. "Not now. Not ever." Shantel exhaled softly, her lips curving into a small, steady smile as the car carried them forward, together unmovable. Back at the mansion, Heejin strode toward her bedroom with barely restrained fury, her sharp movements drawing startled glances from the household staff. The air around her felt charged, dangerous. The moment she stepped inside her room, all control shattered. Chaos erupted. She grabbed the nearest object and hurled it across the room. Glass shattered. A vase hit the wall and exploded into fragments. Anything within reach was crushed, thrown, or smashed as her rage poured out unchecked. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. She forced herself to breathe, once, twice, until the storm inside her settled into something colder, more focused. With trembling fingers, she reached for the phone on her makeup table and dialed the number Choi's man had sent her earlier. It rang only briefly before connecting. "I want to meet your boss," she said sharply. "Tell me where." There was a pause on the other end, then the man replied evenly. "He'll be at the Luxor Club tonight. It's exclusive. You won't miss it." "Good," Heejin said and hung up. She lowered the phone slowly, her reflection staring back at her from the mirror, eyes dark, expression ruthless. If Shantel thought she could simply walk in and take Ryu Haesoo from her, she was gravely mistaken. At exactly 8 p.m., Heejin stepped through the grand entrance of the Luxor Club, the soft glow of crystal chandeliers glinting off her impeccably tailored outfit. Every detail had been chosen with precision, elegant, powerful, impossible to overlook. Her heels struck the polished marble floor in sharp, deliberate clicks, each step announcing her presence with quiet authority. The club pulsed with restrained opulence. Low music blended seamlessly with hushed conversations, while the air carried the layered scents of expensive perfume and aged liquor. Heads turned subtly as she passed, eyes lingering with curiosity and admiration, but Heejin did not acknowledge them. Her focus was razor-sharp, her gaze sweeping the room with calculated intent. She moved with controlled grace, every gesture refined, every breath measured. Yet beneath the flawless composure lay something far more dangerous, a cold, simmering resolve sharpened by jealousy and ambition. Minutes later, Heejin spotted Choi Seokjun seated in a secluded corner, a woman perched too close, laughing softly as she traced a finger along his glass. The moment Seokjun's eyes lifted and found Heejin, his expression shifted. With a lazy wave of his hand, he dismissed the woman without a word. She left immediately. Seokjun leaned back and motioned to the empty seat across from him. Heejin walked over and sat, her posture elegant, her chin lifted. "I didn't know I was going to meet one of the most dangerous Mafia figures in this city," she said coolly. Seokjun smirked, clearly amused. "Danger is a matter of perspective," he replied with indifference. Without wasting time, his tone turned businesslike. "You will find an excuse to visit Ryu at his mansion. While you're there, memorize everything. The layout, the security points, and most importantly, the number of men stationed inside." Heejin listened intently, her eyes steady. "Once you report back to me, Seekjun continued, swirling his drink. I'll strike one of Ryu's key projects. When he leaves to handle it, my men will storm his mansion. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze sharp. Do we have a deal, Miss Heejin? A slow smile spread across Heejin's lips. Satisfaction gleamed in her eyes as she nodded. We do. Seekjun's smirk deepened. The alliance was sealed, quietly, dangerously, and with consequences neither of them truly feared. What do you think will happen next? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next episode of Captured by a Mafia, Saved by Another. See you soon.